8 years, 4 months, and 5 days before being stabbed while acting on the set of a vampire movie, Terrence, now 36, leaned against the side of the limo, smoking cigarettes. Terrence had been driving a limo part-time for the last year or so, and hadn't been to an audition since he couldn't remember when. He kept up on who the hot producers and casting agents were in the event that he should get one of them in the back of his limo, because he still held out hope for acting. He still went to acting classes, still submitted his headshot for roles, still kept in excellent physical shape, still did an occasional student film, but mostly he drove a limo. Hi, I'm Neil A. Yeager, and today I'm reading from my novel, Non-Hollywood. I know some people have been kind of confused about the timing here. The bulk of the book takes place in November of 2010. Now, obviously, Terrence's story is taking place in flashbacks. The first flashback was in 1990. This one, 8 years prior, is 2002. So just so that makes sense, because some of the people who are mentioned, think of them in 2002. Anyway, this is chapter 48, Danny Trejo Fan Club. While Terrence was out driving a limo on that Saturday afternoon, his daughter, Holly, 12, and her friend Julia were spending a bored afternoon going through all of the junk on Terrence's overflowing desk. Little Julia picked up one of Terrence's headshots and said, "Your dad's better looking than my dad. My dad's big and fat. Your dad's like Brad Pitt." "My dad doesn't look like Brad Pitt," Holly replied. "I know, but I mean, he's good looking and he's old, like Brad Pitt." Melanie, 35, who had been at her own desk doing paperwork for her new job, looked up and said, Whoa there, girls. Brad Pitt is not old." "Is so," said both girls. "He's only a few years older than I am," said Melanie. "You're old too, Mom," said Holly with a giggle. "Thanks." The girls returned to looking through Terrence's things. Holly looked at the bookcase, which was overflowing with books dedicated to the acting profession. The girls started pulling books out and looking at them. "Why does Daddy have so many books on acting?" "Because Mommy keeps buying them for him." "Why?" Melanie sighed and said, "To tell you the truth, I'm not really sure anymore." "What?" "Nothing. Mommy buys the acting books because she loves Daddy. And Daddy wants the books because he wants to be a movie star." "Like Brad Pitt?" "Yes, like Brad Pitt." Then the girls suddenly became bored with Terrence's things, and they bolted out to the living room. Melanie looked over at the books that the girls had left on the floor. She sighed and walked over to the pile. As she lifted up one of the books, she examined its cover and slowly shook her head. She was familiar with these books, had seen their covers staring back at her over the years, all different, yet all the same. She sighed and decided to leave the books where they were. Later, after Terrence had returned from his limo shift, Melanie watched as he went over to the pile of books on the floor. "The girls were playing there," she said. "Oh, okay," said Terrence. He picked up one of the books, but instead of putting it back on the shelf, he sat down at his desk and opened up the book to an obviously familiar section. Melanie sighed and said, "Can I ask you something without it turning into something?" "Turning into something? What do you mean?" "I mean that, I've always been supportive of your acting, but anytime I say anything that could be interpreted as critical, you get all defensive." "No, I don't." Wait, that sounded defensive, didn't it? Okay, I'll try not to. What's the question? Melanie walked over and slowly tapped the cover of the book he was reading. "All right," she said. "How many times are you going to read that thing?" "What do you mean?" "This book is supposed to tell you how to make it as an actor, and you've read it like 60 times. It doesn't seem to be working. So have you ever considered the possibility that maybe that book's crap?" What? Said Terrence. This is not crap. This is far from being crap. This is one of the best-selling books on how to make a career out of being an actor. Right, said Melanie as she rubbed her temples. And remind me again, which successful actor wrote this book? Oh wait, I forgot. It's not written by a successful actor. Mel, no, really. You look at the photo on the back of that book and you think, who the hell is this woman? And you read the little about the author thing and you see that this woman who's telling you how to make a living as an actor doesn't. She's not making money as an actor, she's making money as an author. Terrence replied, so? You don't think it's weird to take advice from someone who hasn't actually done what they're advising? Would you buy a workout book written by some big fat guy? No, said Terrence, but what, you think Brad Pitt's going to take time out of filming to write a book about how to succeed in the film business? Melanie laughed and shook her head. Brad Pitt. What? Nothing. No, I don't expect Brad Pitt to write a book, but I'd hope that at least one of these books would be by someone whose name I've heard of. Or at least when I look at their photo, I'd say, oh yeah, it's that big scary guy. Terrence replied, oh, that's just... Wait, big scary guy? Melanie said, yeah, the big scary guy with the scars on his face. He's been in lots of stuff. You see him all over the place. Such as? He was in that movie you rented a few weeks ago, the one about the vampires in the bar. He played the bartender, and I think he stabbed Quentin Tarantino in the hand. Terrence rummaged his brain. You mean Danny Trejo? I don't know who I mean. I don't know what his name is, but I've seen him in lots of stuff, and he always plays big scary guys. His name is Danny Trejo. Fine, shouted Melanie, finally losing her patience. His name is Danny Trejo. Danny Trejo, Danny Trejo, Danny Trejo. The point is that even though Danny Trejo is not a big movie star, Danny Trejo is in enough stuff that he's obviously making a living at acting, which is something you can't say about the author of the book you're reading now. Terrence put his book down on the table and was about to start speaking a sentence which would have begun with the name Danny Trejo, but Melanie interrupted him and plowed forward, saying, if we walked into that actor's bookstore for the 5 millionth time and I saw a book titled How to Actually Make a Living at Acting So Your Wife Doesn't Have to Support You by Danny Trejo, I'd snatch that sucker up and give it to you gift-wrapped. If Danny Trejo was giving seminars on how to make a career out of acting and he was charging $2,000 a pop, I'd max out my last credit card to get you in there. But Danny Trejo doesn't write these books, does he? They're always written by people who haven't done what Danny Trejo does. Well, good to know that Danny Trejo has a fan club. Damn straight he does. Maybe I'll go knock on Danny Trejo's door, tell him he absolutely needs to write a book for my husband. I just have to find out where he lives. Wherever it is, it's probably nicer than where we live. And with that, Melanie walked into the bedroom and slammed the door.